Introduction. Find out why the gap between rich and poor is so wide. In 2007-2008, a serious economic crisis occurred in the US, which for many, came as a complete surprise. It began with the collapse of housing prices and pulled negative changes in all areas of the economy. For the first time, the crisis affected not only the middle class but also wealthy Americans. Being rich in today's world is becoming more and more difficult. Our lives are changing. Prestigious education is no longer enough to get rich and preserve financial well-being. Good work, hard work, and highly paid position do not guarantee you wealth. The modern financial system operates under completely different principles. The only way to become truly rich is to own and use assets. You'll find out in the following insights: how banks make money, why a well-paid job wouldn't make you rich, why there is no financial education in the school curriculum. Insight 1. The American economy, with a constantly growing inflation rate, deprives people of wealth. The poor get poorer, and the rich get richer. Never in the history of the United States have these words been so relevant. Every year, more and more Americans are going bankrupt because of inflation. For the average citizen, it is expressed as a sharp depreciation of the money earned by hard work. To save some savings, people put money in the bank. But it only provokes further inflation. The mechanism is simple. The bank provides funds received from clients as a loan to creditors. The state sets a credit bank limit. Before the collapse of 2007, banks had the right to issue loans totaling 34 times what was in vaults. Thus, banks lent more than they received from depositors. The amount of money in the market increased, which led to inflation and the depreciation of the population's savings. Financial crises under such a system are consequent. The state takes out multi-million bank loans paid off by taxpayers to save large companies on the verge of bankruptcy. In other words, the current monetary system is creating poverty. Inflation is only dangerous for office workers, freelancers, small entrepreneurs, all those who work for wages. This category of people, the middle class, pays the highest taxes and usually keeps their savings in the bank. This is why the number of middle class is rapidly decreasing, from 50.3% in 1970 to 42.2% in 2010. The money system is designed to keep people poor, not to make them rich. Robert Kiyosaki. Insight 2. Most people do not have sufficient financial education. Everyone dreams of becoming rich. Unfortunately, they don't study that at school. Although it is believed that education gives a person a chance to get out of poverty, study harder, and you will have a good job with a high salary. But it's not that simple. The modern education system aims to educate a generation of hired workers, taxpayers, and consumers. Therefore, even a few higher education institutions today cannot guarantee you a good job and a comfortable life. Of course, there is nothing wrong with working hard and becoming an ordinary taxpayer. But if you dream of wealth, that's not the way for you. Schools do not prepare students for making money, so they do not offer any financial education. For the same reason, we are vulnerable to financial crises. When the market collapsed in 2007, most Americans saw it as a real estate crisis and stocks. It was the collapse of the derivatives market. A derivative is an agreement under which the parties undertake to make a transaction on predetermined conditions. Derivatives today constitute the largest part of the market, most often not regulated, and their collateral is equal to zero. American families have lived happily ever after, thanks to credit cards and housing loans. These were the derivatives. When housing prices collapsed in 2007, millions of Americans were on the verge of poverty. Financiers predicted the crisis. In 2000 to 2007, there was an unprecedented rise in prices in the derivatives market. After such rises, there is sure to be a downturn. If Americans were financially literate, the crisis would not come as a surprise to them, and many could avoid ruin. The lack of financial education leads to a distortion of ideas about money and wealth. It is believed that rich people are scammers who seek to profit from the poor. This judgment is only partially true. Many become millionaires through their generosity. John Rockefeller, for example, earned his capital by selling gas at lower prices than competitors. He, of course, got rich, but he also made life easier for millions of ordinary Americans who couldn't afford gas before. Derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction. Warren Buffett, American investor. Insight 3. You won't be rich without financial education. Education is considered to be the main step towards wealth. To become rich, it is enough to be educated. All you need is financial education. To be financially educated is to think for yourself and gain knowledge to create your assets. Only a financial education can make you rich. But your welfare is not good for the state. That's why they don't teach finance at school. Having no financial education, it is elementary to make a mistake when assessing your assets. For example, many believe that housing is an asset. This is not true because the house requires you to spend on mortgage payments and taxes. The salary, even the highest one, does not apply to assets. Assets are the only income that adds to the budget, whether you are working or not. But the old house that you buy, renovate and rent will be your asset. Because you'll get paid for it without working. So, to understand how to create your assets, you need financial education. Knowledge gives power. If you want to control people's lives, restrict their access to knowledge. This is why, throughout history, despots have burned books and sent into exile, or even killed, those who possessed knowledge and threatened their power. Knowledge is the most powerful force in the world. That is why control over it is a prerequisite for the preservation of power. Robert Kiyosaki. Insight 4. Assess your financial situation and start building assets. It's tough to tell if you're rich or poor. Even with a good house and an expensive car, you can be considered poor from an economic point of view. If you decide to change your financial situation, first of all, start with an assessment of what you own. Keep a record of all your income and expenses and track your assets and liabilities. For example, you have a salary of $10,000, an apartment you rent for $1,000, monthly payments of $2,000, and rent for Ferrari of $1,000. Most people think they have assets. But they're wrong. All of the above require regular payments from you and force you to work all the time. So, soberly assess your financial situation. Look at the 4 asset classes: business, real estate, securities, and commodities, and choose the one you are personally interested in. It's essential to do what you like. For example, the author is interested in oil, precious metals, and historical buildings, so he chose real estate and goods. His hobby motivates him to explore his assets and win on their sale when market prices go up. The acquisition of assets is the first step to your new rich life. Knowledge is power, lack of knowledge is weak. Robert Kiyosaki. Insight 5. Think about what kind of future you want for yourself, and move towards it purposefully. So, higher education and the best diploma will not provide you with a rich life. The key to success is financial education. First of all, think about the future you dream of. Remember, money is not the most important thing. Often ordinary people feel a lot happier than millionaires. Think about what's right for you. If you decide to get rich, get rid of the mentality of an employee, and start thinking like a big businessman. Secondly, remember that success is impossible without education. You need knowledge in economics. Modern education system trains specialists, and for financial success, it is necessary to become universal. One of the key differences between a specialist and a universal is that a specialist knows a lot about little, and a universal knows a little about everything. When an entrepreneur starts his own business, he has to go into all its components, from product development to company management. That's why good business people only come from universals. And here experts should be engaged in each particular direction of activity of the company. Do not try to study one sphere thoroughly if you want to be an entrepreneur. Learn a little about what's needed for your business, how to build a team, how to develop leadership skills, what tasks a young company needs to solve. And hire specialists. Strive for cooperation, not competition. Modern employees are determined to compete with their peers for pay, a good position, and success. Try to build team relationships based on cooperation. An experienced entrepreneur knows how to achieve this and lead the company to success. One of the main advantages of financial education is that it gives a person the strength necessary to always be able to choose the right decision and never get into a situation that forces him to sell his soul for money. Robert Kiyosaki. Insight 6. Develop intelligence through practice. A rich man is always distinguished by high intellect. However, this is not at all the intellect that is evaluated at school. As a rule, a smart pupil has a good memory and starts reading and writing early. But in the real world, we can move forward with completely different abilities and skills. For an entrepreneur, intelligence is the ability to take risks, be prepared for financial losses, learn from mistakes, and remain at a high level year after year. Mastering these practical skills is much more important than knowing who the 36th President of the United States was. How to acquire such skills? You can attend training sessions, learn from friends, take special courses. Any option will do. The most important thing is to hone your acquired skills and practice. Knowledge is not the information you memorized for the written test. It is a repeated skill that has become a personal experience. You will inevitably make many mistakes in the process. And this is very good. Learn to learn from mistakes, and then negative experiences will help you avoid them in the future. It is customary at school to punish mistakes. But is it possible to learn something without making mistakes? Before you start investing, simulate the situation in practice. Thus, the author has been successfully engaged in real estate for many years. Before buying his first apartment, he spent a few months studying the proposals on the market, visited hundreds of objects sold, and regularly communicated with brokers. Regular practice is the best way to develop entrepreneurial skills and become successful. The most successful people make the most mistakes. Robert Kiyosaki. Insight 7. Don't be afraid to borrow to create assets. Most people follow simple rules: work hard, stay out of debt, and be fine. But it's different from entrepreneurs. Debt can be a powerful tool for financial gain. Imagine a musician who finished giving concerts and completely switched to selling his CDs. By doing less work, he keeps making a profit. In the same way, the duty can help you. If you want to become rich, find a way to work less, but get more. The author bought his first small apartment for $50,000. He paid a deposit of $5,000 and took a $45,000 loan at 10%. He paid about $450 every month and took $750 for the rent of the apartment. The debt helped him make a profit without any effort. Another example of the successful use of debt is the purchase of an ancient church in Scotland. For many years the building was in ruins, and no one thought that it could be of any value. But a successful businessman paid attention to an empty building, repurchased it with a large loan, and rebuilt it into an exclusive residential complex, which brings huge profits. Use debt to create assets. And let everyone around you think that you have to work hard, save money, and not get into debt. You already know that in today's world, it doesn't bring wealth. It's much smarter to borrow and create your assets. Good debts are debts that make you richer. Robert Kiyosaki. Conclusion. Main idea. The modern monetary system deprives people of hard-earned money. The education system does not help to overcome financial illiteracy. If you want to become rich, you are on your own. Find out which asset class you are interested in, study it, and start buying your assets, even in debt. Tune into the future you want for yourself and work hard in this direction.